Hey everybody, this is Petra Monaco with the Rebels Dad, and I have with me T from the White Collar Sideshow. Hi, thanks for being
Hello.
here.
You got it. Man, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for those unfamiliar with what you do and who you guys are, because it's your team with you and your wife, explain to the audience what it is, what you do, what you're about, that kind of a thing.
Sure, man. We play music, obviously, and we just released our third album, so we've got three albums, but they're all concept albums. So I write all the music, and then we write original films that play behind us. So the whole show is edited together, similar to, I guess, in a weird way, like a Pink Floyd The Wall, although it's not that. It's one of my influences. Uh, so they're all concept albums. So from the start to the finish, the album kind of has a story behind it. and uh and so it's bass and drums. I do drums and vocals. My wife does bass and vocals. And then we worked with producer Chris Baseford, who has also worked with like Avril Lavigne, Rob Zombie, John Five, Nickelback, these kinds of artists. We're kind of the the dogs under the table that he gets to throw a bone to. and
Right.
But he gets a creative outlet as well, and he helps us put all the music together, the ideas. So the computer runs a lot of our guitars, our backing vocals, our tracks, and things like that. So it's a very interesting show.
Yeah.
But man, it's what we do. It's kind of what comes out of my head. My wife is our manager, and also all of our business end and does all the marketing. So we make a good team that way, where I do the creative and she does the business side.
Yeah.
And then a lot of our shows are really just about helping people realize they're not alone on the planet in our strange and creepy and sci-fi sort of way.
Yeah,
It,
no, I love that. But where do you get your inspiration from to create these kind of concept um, songs for going along with the film? Like, what was the inspiration behind that?
yeah, I think early on, like The Doors is probably one of my greatest. I want to say influences, one of my favorite bands. Looking back at even old videos, they're trying to be more theatrical in a
Hmm.
way, in a sense, for that time. And then I'd have to say, of course, like Pink Floyd, but Nine Inch Nails, White Zombie, Rob Zombie really inspired me to do film or video, or just to show somebody something that maybe they could align with the songs. And but a lot of the concepts, I'm a big Twilight Zone fan. I'm a horror film fan, so
Right.
a lot of that goes into what we do. But a lot of it too is also all the films that we've done, all the albums that we've done are through personal struggles. The things we go through as human beings, the things that will bring us down. Our loneliness, our frustration, our hatred, our addictions. And then you go through one chapter and you overcome, and then there's other things that you fall back down and you have to learn how to overcome again. And through shame and guilt and a lot of those emotions that kind of haunt our lives when we're struggling with different forms of things that we're going through, it's, for me, an outlet to write in the place that I'm in, to help other people realize that, hey man, this is you too, or this could be you. But together, man, we can
Mhm.
overcome and get through this, and maybe our short stories can help each other realize that we're not alone on the planet. And again, I do that in a weird and strange way because our music is industrial. We call it shock and roll, so it's heavier. A lot of the films are horror based, or kind of this weird Twilight Zone based stuff. And that's just my personal take of what's going on through my head.
Yeah,
You know,
but I think that's so great. I mean, because we have people in all in this world in all different genres, and I feel like no matter what genre, there's a handful of musicians who do the same thing, but they do it what feels good to them, how they want to share that message, and no matter what kind of genre, you're still gonna have a target market that's gonna have resonate with what you do. I mean, clearly, we
sure.
all know not everybody's gonna resonate with what you do, and then there's this other side going, "Oh my God, they're amazing," right? Like,
Well, that's what we hope, right?
well, of course, but again, it's I think it's really important um, that people know they're not alone, because truly, you don't know somebody else's story,
Right.
and
And
even
when you're going through something like that, especially for me, like the past couple of years, I have really struggled with falling back down again, making hard decisions, making hard phone calls, asking for forgiveness, and trying to overcome falling down. And that's where this whole album, like I Didn't Come Here to Die, was like, man, I didn't come here to die. I came here to live. Easier said than done sometimes, but you're exactly right. Like that's where it comes from, is sometimes our mind can become our own prison, where you feel like you're the only one struggling. And I guess for myself, being a creative person or an artistic person, that is the outlet to go, man, yeah, these songs are about depression, they're about loneliness, they're about guilt, they're about shame. But at the end of the day, it's also about grace. And it's also about going, man, you know what? This isn't the end of my life, because this is the beginning of something that's even more special. And that's helping someone else maybe go further than we ever will on the planet.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that, because I can look back on my life going, holy Batman, right? Like, what was I thinking? That kind, and then beating yourself up over it, that kind of thing, right?
Sure, yeah,
like,
yeah.
That's what I tend to do. Beat myself up for decisions that I've made.
Man, we're in the same boat, and millions of people are in that boat.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And I also believe, like, we can all, like, two people can go through the same exact scenario and come out on the other side completely different. Like, they're not going to have the same thoughts or the same experience. Like, I know that in my world. You know what I mean? Like, I grew up in foster care. My experience is completely different than somebody else who went through foster care.
Sure. I mean, that's individual. That's what makes us all different. We're not all robots in that sense.
Right. But the great thing about music is that we are able to find that commonality amongst it. Like, oh, I know when I felt like that. Like, just because we had different journeys, it's like, I can connect with that. You know what I mean? Like, my story is vastly different, but there's probably something that you're singing about, and I'm going, oh, I know that. I know that feeling, right? And that's what music, I think that's so very, very beautiful, no matter what genre you listen to.
Sure. There is a little bit of glue and all of that, where, emotionally, I feel like that's the connection through all of us who have a similar story, is that emotional connection. And yeah, you're right. Like, that's what music is for.
Yeah. So I know we've got to some of the basics, but how long have you been doing music? Like, since you were little, since you're a teenager, like, when did you find that this was the outlet for you?
I think music's always been in my life, even as a little kid. I remember having Beach Boys albums and, listening to music all the time. And of course, my parents were into music, and my other side of the family was into music. But I started playing drums when I was about 12. So a little bit of age, 1986, I believe, is when when I started. And of course, when I was into Michael Jackson and Prince when I was in elementary, and of course those influences last forever. Then I got into hair metal, was huge in the 80s. So,
oh, I know that one. Showing my Poison, age now.
Your Motley Crue, your Poison, your Tesla. But Metallica was a band back then that I had, when I had Kill 'Em All, and I had, Injustice for All, Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, all these albums, that was a huge influence in my life, because there was a texture of maturity in that music to me, where not that 80s metal wasn't mature, but there was something in that music that really spoke to me, especially as a drummer. And so I went through that process of Metallica, never left my Walkman in the cassette player or whatever, and I'm roaming around. And then, of course, you hit your 90s. I was just graduating high school, and you had your Alice in Chains, your Rage Against the Machine. Nirvana was huge. A lot of bands like that. Korn was coming around. Tool was coming around. So there's a lot of things in that era that really influenced me. But I think mostly it was Nine Inch Nails that kind of, when I first saw that, it was almost like, okay, I need to leave the past behind and move into this. This is what's grabbing me. I see the imagery. I hear these beats. I can see that you can use technology to kind of run your shows. And then obviously Rob Zombie, White Zombie, I got to see them with the Melvins back in the day with Reverend Horton Heat. Those were bands that were really just, wow, there's things happening here that nobody's doing. It's just not a machine. It's creative. It's different. And so, I guess to make a long answer short, 1986 is kind of when I started playing drums, but I've been playing drums ever since, I guess, 34 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not near the drummer that you should be at 34 years. You know, especially when you're watching YouTube videos and things like that, you're like, wow, these guys are geniuses.
Oh,
and,
like the 5-year-old that just went viral?
Come on.
You know what I mean?
Come on. What am I doing with my life?
Showing up by a 5-year-old.
I know it. So, I mean, that's the key too, is, you know, I feel like I've become a better songwriter.
Yeah.
Not that I've become a worse drummer, but I feel like I'm writing drum parts more for the music rather than just being an exceptional, crazy drumming artist like that. And so that's become a different form of music in my life too, like writing for music rather than just writing for these crazy drum parts, you know, and just being a drummer in a band. It's a different ball game than what I used to do playing in other bands.
Well, and so you also have a message to share, and you're creating from a very personal source too, so that kind of plays part of in your songwriting, right? So you can't just put some beats together when the whole song has a thing happening, you know what I mean?
Well, I mean, and honestly for me, like I went through a lot in my life, and the good Lord changed my life. I'm not pushing that on anyone. That's what's happened in my life. And, you know, I have to look back and go, wow, if it was never for that moment, I don't think I would be doing anything along the lines of what I'm doing now. And I feel like in every perspective of every artist, like there is some form of platform or message that you're trying to get through to people, or else it's not real.
Yeah, I agree with that. Because I certainly, you know, like I'm trained in music. I understand music theory. I used to write my own songs like back in the day, 86.
Hey, come on, man.
And so I've been coming full circle now, being more involved with the music scene again, right? Like that's what happened for me. Like I started off playing music, practicing 5 gazillion times a day.
Yes.
And then coming away from it for personal challenges that I had to overcome. And here I'm back again at being involved. I mean, I still play for fun. Nobody wants a recorder in their band.
Well, well, you never know. I watched the Grammys last night, and Lizzo had a flute. She pulled out this jazz flute.
Oh, there might be still hope for me then.
So you never know. Especially with technology, you add a little distortion to that, man. You're on.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. Like there's people on all sides of the fences where like, don't use your platform for your message. At the same time, but isn't that what your platform is for? And and I love that you brought that up. I don't judge what people believe in. You do you, right?
Yeah,
like,
right.
You do you, and I do me, and we're good.
Yeah, that's right.
But you do have a platform, and whether it's, you know, whatever, like Rage Against the Machine, they have their platform, and they use it how they see fit using it, and you use yours by sharing what you want to share from a very personal and maybe spiritual, religious influences in some kind of way. People are going to resonate with that.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. And I also, on the other side of the spectrum of that is, you know, if it wasn't for this happening in my life, you know, finding God, moving forward through addictions and even falling back down and, you know, and getting back up and going, wow, you know, I failed in a lot of ways, but through what I've been through before, I know I can get back up and move forward again. You know, there's a lot of that, I think, that resonates with people. And a lot of people do ask, like, how'd you get through this? How did you do this? And so the honest part of that is saying, well, you know, I don't know if you believe or don't believe this, but I gave my life to God and it started changing, and I was able to redirect the path that I was on, or he was able to redirect the path that I was on to get to this point now. And, you know, we've been a band now for 14 years, and you know, it's survival. There's
sure.
we haven't seen the financial part of money in the music business. So you really, for me, I have more faith in what we do living this way than I have ever had really in my whole life, because we really do live to survive. You know, we don't charge for shows. We live off other people's donations, love. And I know it's kind of an old school hippie way to think about it, But at the same time, there's something to that, because you really meet people who are interested in what you're doing, and or are interested in, wow, I would like to have a life change in my world too, because I feel like I'm just so down and I needed stepping stone to something new and different.
See, and to me, that's really, really beautiful. Like, I'm not of Christian faith, but I do have my own certain beliefs that help me through some really difficult times. I mean,
Sure.
you know, I almost saw my kid dying, so that's not an easy thing to walk away. And
No, I wouldn't
still,
expect it would be.
you know, the trauma is still very real, and I still struggle with that. But music, I found, is sort of like, I don't even know what the English word would be, but it's sort of, you know, when you can't say it, music is sort of speaks for you.
Yeah, yeah, it's perfect.
Right?
Like the way you said
I'm
that.
lost for words, and I can play a song and it will convey exactly how I feel at any given moment.
Sure.
And so I feel that music,
It could be a heartbeat.
yes, without a question, it gives you hope. It gives you a little bit of faith. It gives you, oh, because, and I love sharing these stories, because it's like, oh, well, if you've done it, then I can do it. Maybe with a little bit of hope, with a little bit like, hey, direct me.
Yes.
Like, reach out to you and say, what's my first step if you don't know?
Totally resonate with that. Totally.
Yeah, so I just find what you guys are doing, from this very personal message very beautiful, no matter what the face. Like, I don't even, there's no judgment here.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Petra. I appreciate you.
No, absolutely, because I think we all have to find this thing, whether it be Christianity or something else, that will help us. I believe in a higher power. I just don't call him God. You know what I mean? Like, that's literally the only difference.
I've been in some recovery groups where it's higher power is,
Yeah.
you know, and you know what, even being in some of those groups, what's interesting enough to me is I feel like we talk about God more than anything. You know, when you're at the bottom of the barrel and you have no place else to go, and a rope comes down,
Yeah.
and you just hold on, there's something to be said about, like, wow, that was unexpected, or man, I would have never have found that had I never been at the bottom of the barrel. And then to go on and do music from that, you know, I thought music was over for me after that.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life, because you don't see yourself in that same way. Then all of a sudden, all these dreams and ideas and crazy things started coming into my brain, and then writing all these things down. And it was like, wow, there's something here. And it seems like it's just something special.
Yeah.
You know, we got to do this thing.
No, I love that. I got chills when you just said that, because I so resonate with that on so many levels.
Love it, man.
Yeah, no, it's the most beautiful thing. So you guys will be at Metal in the Mountains. I'm excited to meet you guys and hang out. And
yes, I'm stoked about that.
So thrilled. I'll be like front row going,
Yes, it'll be great to meet you in person too. I can't wait for you to meet my wife, and
yeah, absolutely. I totally look
really
forward.
build a new community, you know, and I'm stoked about all that. I love festivals that way.
Yeah, what I love about festivals like Metal in the Mountains, and I'm supporting another one as well, it's what I've found in my conversations with most musicians. Mental health is a really big deal.
Yeah.
Whether it's because of addiction or something else, depression, anxiety, like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
So many of us struggle with that. And so for me, my home is the metal community. Because we all just kind of get each other.
You know, I'm in therapy. I'm not ashamed to say that. I think therapy
love you.
has
You're
been
definitely my favorite.
Therapy is something for me that has changed my world.
Yeah.
I have dealt with suicide and depression my whole life, and even into the music process of all of these things.
Sure.
There's a lot where, you know, this is a very selfish world. The music world is, where sell my t-shirts, buy my albums, you know, download my things. I need better shows, managers, tours. I need booking agents. I need all these things. And then you measure your success by what your friends' bands are doing. There's so many places that you get to mentally where you're like, why am I even doing this? What am I doing this for? What's the purpose behind this? And it's easy to let those kind of things control your mind rather than just being the creative and going out and building relationships. And that's what music is for anyway. But at the same time, struggling through the 14-year process of, and then, you know, you start using things to where you start falling down again, because you're trying to cope with all of your emotions, anxiety, loneliness, depression, suicidal thoughts, through all these things. I've been seeing a therapist for the last year. It has been a year and a half, maybe. It's been game changer. It's been life changing. And
one of the things, this is not the first time we talked, small transparency, but I absolutely love your transparency, because you know, I'm from Europe. I grew up in the 80s, and there was such a stigma around mental health and receiving support and getting services and seeing somebody to help with your thoughts and whatever, that my foster parents never pushed for me to go to therapy. Now, I wouldn't imagine not doing that. Right?
Sure.
And we have to have these conversations. That's why I love that you're just like, yeah, I'm in therapy, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you need help, you got to get help. I mean, you go to the doctor for a broken leg. Why not go to see somebody to help with your thoughts? You know what I mean?
That's right. Hey man, it's the same. Like you can eventually, your brain will heal itself, and there's nothing wrong with going to the process of pushing that forward, and instantly sometimes.
Yeah, and there's nothing on. So my son and I are in therapy. My kid's a special needs kid. He's autistic, and we're facing some challenges. We're in therapy together because I was like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I don't know how to help him. And I have a degree in mental health. You know what I mean? Like, I went to college and I understand it, but I'm his mother. So it's just like, I don't know how to help him. Where I was like, we got to get some support around this because he's almost an adult.
I mean, challenges you never would have thought of.
No, absolutely not.
I mean, and that's the thing too. That's what's good about, like what you said earlier about being in the community is, you're sharing that story for someone else to go, wow, you know what? Maybe that's not a bad idea. Maybe I could use something that I haven't thought of before to help me get to a different place or get a step further, and start to heal from the inside out. Yeah. And then as an artist, you know, all that healing becomes creativity. Absolutely. And you got your outlet to write. But it's super important. It's community. It's cheerleading each other. It's encouraging each other. It's building into each other. Even in a dark, heavy metal world, there can still be a little bit of light out there to shine on somebody as we are getting older in this too.
While we're sort of on this topic, so I do a lot of interviews at like local shows, right? Like at the moment type situations, and I follow the pages. And they may be fairly new bands. I mean, they might have only been together like a month, and they're doing a show, right? And you're like, yes, that's awesome. Like, I'd cheer everybody on anyway. But then I see this Facebook post going, oh, we have a negative comment, and they get all down about it. What's your thought on about that? Because I have my own thoughts about that. But what are yours when you get that negative feedback from somebody?
Oh man, and we do.
I thought you might.
I think what's hard is, like, for us, it took us 2.5 years to put the film that plays behind us together, and people don't realize the time it takes. Like for us, it's been almost 5 years between each album because we're putting this production process together. And so there's this film, you're also putting the albums together. There's no money, so you have to take your time to be able to do it as excellent as you can. Yeah. And so you spend 2.5 years putting this film together, and then, you know, that's your music videos as well. So you put a music video out, and in 30 seconds, someone gets on there and is like, oh, this is terrible. This is a rip off. This is a rip off of this band or that band, or that's all they're trying to be, is a cheap imitation of something else. And you know, here's the thing, you have 100 great comments and one hate. And what's the one that you remember? Is the hate.
Negative feedback, because that's what you focus on instead of focusing on all the other amazing comments that you're getting. And that's why I asked you that question, because it's literally this past week I observed this happen, and I'm like, who gives a flying fart what other people think?
Well, I mean, ultimately,
it's so personal, right? Like, it's just, we just I mean, I go that with my art. I'm like, oh, what if they hate it?
And you know what? Who's like, no, I don't think anyone's exempt from that. And even the worst part of it is when it's a family member. I mean,
Oh,
that's something that that I've had to deal with too, where it's like, here's some comments from family members where you're like, oh man, I thought for sure like you were supporting this and that. But you know, I feel like I've had to come to a place, and again, those kinds of things I have to deal with in therapy, because
mhm.
it does consume me, where it's like, man, you want everyone to love what you do. You want everyone to be happy with what you've done. You know, we covered a Doors song, and, you know, we covered Break On Through by the Doors, which is an amazing song,
Yeah.
which is a song, a timeless song. And we did it in a different way because I knew how can you recreate something that good, you know? And people have listened to that song for decades and decades and have memories and have different thoughts of that song. So when I did that version, we tried to do a version of it that was something that was ours, that
Yeah.
came from our side of it. And you know, there was a lot of haters of, how would you dare touch the song? Jim Morrison's rolling over in his grave. They don't know how influential the Doors have been in my life. They just
Yeah.
know that they've heard this version of the song. There's a video to it. So you'd have all these great comments of, wow, this is great. It's different. It's a different version. And then you'd have people who have listened to the song for decades going, how would you dare do something
Yeah.
like that?
For sure.
And you know what? I get it. Like I had to come to a place where, you know what? I've heard cover songs where I haven't been a fan of the person who's covered them. I
Totally.
get that. I get it. And so I would just go through and say, hey, you know what? I get it. Thank you for listening. At least thank you for at least listening to
Yeah.
this song. And I would respond with just try to be kind. And usually they would respond and say, you know what? I'm going to go listen to your other songs because
Yeah.
I see, you know, and those kinds of things. And
I
then
love that.
sometimes you don't get that. And that's where therapy comes in.
Yeah, for sure.
but, but again, you have to, I think the most important part of it is exactly what you said earlier. It's trying to figure out how to not have fear of what other people think, fear of the unknown, fear
Yeah.
of failure, fear of, you know, this is an adventure that we're on, and you can't see what's out there. So it's almost like you're getting on the boat and going across the ocean, not knowing what's going on.
Or going
So,
on an airplane, moving to a new country, and not knowing a airplane.
yeah, I mean, you know that more than a lot of people do.
Like, I don't
So
know
it's
what the heck I was thinking.
so it is. It's trying to figure out how to not have fear in
Yeah.
those moments, but exchanging the word, in my opinion, the word love for those moments. Love what other people think, even if they're pointing a finger in your face and calling you the devil. How do
Yeah.
you love that person, and how can they see your heart through your emotions, through your actions, rather than just what you do? Love the journey.
Mm.
Love the failures,
Yeah.
even though that's easier said than done, because once you fail, you can only move forward again and try to put one foot in front of the other. And sometimes those are just baby steps and half baby steps to get to a certain point where you can become who you were meant to be again. And I think that's important too,
Oh, I
even
agree.
in a creepy heavy metal world.
Well, no, I agree. I mean, I wouldn't even try to explain my business to people at this point because it doesn't make any sense to anybody but me. So,
Right. I mean,
you know,
and
because I think it's important that we have this. You can call it purpose, mission, vision, whatever you want to call it, right? Like we all have these different words for it. Um, I'm here to do something. I know, and I'm just following. I love that you used adventure because that's literally my tagline. Like at home, like it's adventure time, or we're going on an adventure because, oh, like we're going through traffic and we're stuck, and it's frustration as we're trying to head to a concert, but it's adventure time.
right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's just that because you just don't know. But one things I've learned in my industry, the coaching industry specifically, is stay in your own lane. Right? Stay focused on your dreams, focus on your goals, and just stay in that lane. Because if you give way to how everybody else is doing, or that you're competition with somebody else, you might just like pack the bags because you're not going to build the skin that you need to make it as a musician,
Sure.
artist, writer, whatever your thing is. So,
I mean, especially in a musical community, you know, we're all trying to do the same thing, and I don't know how other people really measure success, whether it's financial or plays or whatever. I think I've come to a point in my life in this process where I think hanging out with people and really just getting just like a conversation like this, just building relationships. I feel like that's been my measure of success that I've come to terms with, is if we can keep doing this and survive and hang out with people, like that's a great thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like it can be very competitive in a musical community.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's cutthroat sometimes.
Oh yeah. And so I feel like part of me in this is like, you know what? I don't want to put that on me. I'm just going to encourage and build into other people. You know, I feel like I'm more of a mentor on the road than I am even an artist, because we'll have so many younger artists come up, or not just younger artists, but different artists, and say, man, how have you been doing this for 14 years? Can you give me some advice on this? Can you give me some advice on that? And I feel like that's the conversations to me that create success.
Absolutely. Because I literally have found myself with my partner when we go to these shows, coaching these young musicians who are just getting started. They're trying to give us free stickers, and we're like, no, we're happily pay for your CD, your shirt, or your sticker. It is just who we are, because we want to support people who are following their passion and dreams. And they're like, no, here, have a stick. I'm like, no, this is your livelihood. Stop trying to give me shit.
Right.
And they're looking at me like, because everybody else is like, oh yeah, it's free, right? Like everyone's trying to get something for free, and we're like, no, here's the money. And they're looking at you like, are you for real?
I totally get that.
That's how we're building connections and relationships. And I show up, you know what I mean? Like, at least locally, I'm here. I'm like, this is who I am. This is what I do. If you want to have a conversation, let's do it. And here you are.
Man, it's awesome. I feel like when we see each other in person, it'll be great. It'll connection.
Be amazing. I can't wait. Well, thanks, T, so much. Again, this is the White Collar Sideshow. You can find them on the internet and on the Book of Face. I appreciate you.
Hey, thank you, Petra. Really, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.